Welcome back to Berlin, Germany, and our match of the week, the final game of the day. It is Fnatic versus Misfits. This is a fight that can turn the tides in the race for playoffs. Just to set the scene on how important this game is, the winner of this game will have sole control of 5th place, and the loser will be in a 3-way tie for 6th, fighting for their lives when there are no more chances to get a second chance.
That's the thing, there's no more second chances. It is do or die for both these teams. And while it's do or die for Fnatic and Misfits, it's on very different terms. Fnatic completely fumbled the first split of the LEC, but right now they are the favorites going into this match because Misfits have been dead in the water. We're just waiting for a sign of life from these guys.
They certainly have been, Froskin. I have a lot of strong opinions about Misfits, and the first one is going to start in the draft, because for Misfits, I believe that their early game is nowhere near as crisp or as efficient as it was in the past. I think they need to rely more on their team fighting, rely on the solid and consistent players of Hansama and Soaz, and I want to see them drafting more towards that. And you think back to last year when Misfits often held an impressive record against Fnatic, it was because they were winning a lot of those team fights, and it was because they could match you in the 5v5.
Well, let's see how the draft plays out and if you're going to get your team fight composition, Vedius. Early priority in bot lane is Draven, Kalista, Tristana, all taken off the table, and the first target towards Broxah, eliminating his early game impacts.
But outside of the Draven and the Kalista pick, which have started to see a lot of priority cropping up today, there's still so many what you would say OP or blind pickable champions open, the likes of the Jarvan, the likes of the Jace. There are so many big firepower tools slipping through this draft phase, and Fnatic, one of the few teams, 2 on the day, that chose blue side. So what is the priority?
Well, it's got to be something like the Jarvan, something that Bwipo has a lot of comfort on, something that he's had a multitude of successes with over the last few weeks, and you can even flex it into the jungle if you want to. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it banned away from Misfits, but then you leave the Jace open and then you have that flex option.
Or even the Galio, if it's all going to be the Reckless and Hilly show. Hilly has recently returned to form, found a lot of confidence on high engage, impactful supports like that Galio.
Well, let's see what Hillisang plays. I've really liked his Rakan in recent weeks. 4-0. Reckless and Hilly have run the Zyrakan duo several times, but with Lucian unpicked, or rather unbanned, it is first picked here by Reckless.
And you think the snap has to be Jarvan, Braum. Jarvan because of the flex potential, Braum because you don't want to give away Braum, Lucian, unless Hansama and Gorilla have something in the back pocket to deal with such a strong 2v2.
Yeah, I'd be really paranoid about giving away the Braum just because of how strong the likes of Galio, the likes of Alistar into it as well. I much prefer the blind pick Galio because it takes it away from Hillisang, and I don't think there are many other picks you can really draft into it that will complement how effective Lucian is in terms of the early game, unless they go for something that's kind of been quietly working its way into some of the solo queue games.
And Vedi, you said you wanted the strong teamfight presence. You got the cannonball composition in the first 2 picks for Misfits.
Ooh, and this is a great opportunity for Misfits to potentially lock in the Orianna if they want to. Not only would it help facilitate Hansama, because he could then just go for something like a Kai'Sa, but it's that whole protect style. You then have the ability to do well in the laning phase against the Lissandra, and you also have very solid scaling options later on as well.
Well, a couple of champions being hovered through. Orianna played twice, 1 win, 1 loss for Febiven, and it's going to be a pivot to Cassio. Hansama has played the Cassiopeia. It was in a win, and it was one of the wins that helped turn Misfits' second half of the split around.
We've seen how devastating Cassiopeia can be if she slots down into that bot lane position, despite what Keystone, if it's Conqueror, if it's Phase Rush that we've seen on the day, and especially in tandem with a Galio, the all-in engage potential there is actually quite strong. And while Lucian Braum is revered and feared for that, I actually think Cassio and Galio, if they play their cards right, could match this 2v2 pressure.
I actually think it can be a really strong. We got to remember that Lucian was nerfed not too long ago. His W, which is actually what helped him a lot in this matchup specifically, took a big damage hit, which means that this laning phase is harder for him. And what's fascinating is, especially around the level 6 mark, I can see a huge amount of kill threat. And I think Misfits have options to play around the bot side, especially if they choose to put the Jarvan in the jungle. And they do have those flexibility options. That's the most important thing to remember, quick shot. Cassio can go both mid and bot. Jarvan can go top and jungle. So Misfits still have a lot of options.
And important to note that Jarvan has not been played by Maxlow in the jungle yet. This split, it has been a Soaz champion in the top lane. Let's see if they're going to pull that out with Rek'Sai, Nocturne taken off the table. Jace is the other ban from Misfits. And the final phase 2 ban from Fnatic is going to be another jungler or top lane if you're Cabashot in the form of Olaf.
So the reality is at this point, if you're looking at the last 2 picks for Fnatic, they're going to have to blind pick the top laner unless they want to reveal their hand right here. But I think you could
Okay, I think
Or
this is
not.
fine though, no, because like you're guaranteeing a strong topside matchup as well, and like right now I think Renekton is kind of believed from EU's perspective to not have answers, and given that we've just seen one of the answers banned away, it gives a lot of freedom for Misfits to just lock this one in.
But my concern is now that you see the Renekton, you're like, okay, I just got to absorb the dive potential. Things like the Vladimir, like the Poppy, maybe even a skill-based matchup like an Aatrox,
okay.
although I think that could still fit into jungle.
Ooh, but by locking in the Zac here, it would pretty much guarantee that this is going into the jungle.
If Bwipo throws down the gauntlet and it says Aatrox into Renekton, so hype.
I mean, for sure, because even with the changes, Aatrox still very strong in the 1v1. Love this hover of the Evelynn right now. Throw a shout out to Tarzan, who had a fantastic game on it earlier in the day in the SKT versus Griffin matchup. But it looks like we're going to see very standard engage from the side of Fnatic. And the big thing that concerns me right now for what Fnatic have drafted is their early game has been very impressive over the last few weeks. And by going for the Sejuani, I feel like they're a little limited in where their options are in terms of playing around the early game.
And so many of their lanes actually demand a lot of resources because you know that the Braum Lucian, especially in how volatile a matchup from Galio Cassio can be, that you want the jungler kind of in your back pocket. Braum really empowers 3v3 when the junglers get involved because of the Winter's Bite, as well as the Aatrox into the Renekton matchup. I feel like Lyssandra's cool because she's going to get priority anyway. You can leave Nemesis on an island. He's going to be super safe with that champion. But Broxa has to make sure he's constantly on point. Is Bwipo overextended? Do I need to cover him? Or do I need to empower Reckless and Hilly to play out what our priorities were with this Lucian?
So much pressure on Broxa to make the right decisions throughout the course of the laning phase. But we have the Misfits team composition in Vedius. Do you like some of the pivots?
I love it. I actually love this draft from the side of Misfits. I think it complements their styles very, very well. I think Maxtor is just on something that's easy to engage with, which has been a huge problem for this guy so far this split. I think past the 20-minute mark, he's been almost irrelevant for most of this split, and I think it's really difficult to mess up a Jarvan engage. So I think this is very happy. I think you can also leave Febiven off on a side lane on this Rise. He can play just his solo style, which he's had a lot of success with over the last few weeks. They have a very strong 1-4. They can play 1-3-1. They can team fight. I feel like this composition is near enough perfect to complement the style of Misfits.
Oh, if it looks so good on paper, can the players today pull it off? That is the question we're about to answer. Just to remind you guys at home, Fnatic and Misfits sit tied in the standings at 7 wins and 7 losses apiece. But the last time these teams met, it was Misfits that took down Fnatic. And of course, those head-to-heads become so crucially important as we get closer to the end of Week 9. The winner of this game will be sitting in a playoff spot alone with nobody around them. And it is Fnatic starting on the blue side on your screens. Compliments of some fancy League direct-to-camera angles. Their opponents, Misfits Gaming, will be looking to take a clean 2-0 head-to-head over Fnatic. And the fans here in Berlin have been rowdy and noisy all day long. Let's see who they're supporting today.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone in the crowd, for bringing so much energy to what will be a very exciting matchup. And I want to start, Frost, with the junglers, because Maxlor is the man I'm keeping my eyes on. I have been...
You're quite critical of Maxlor.
I have a lot of strong opinions about this guy, and like watching their games over the last few weeks, I just feel like he was the guy that got them their early game leads at the beginning of the split. And ever since, like, they started this losing streak, I feel like he's just been out of sorts. He has not been the guy that we saw last year, even in 2017. And I feel like he's trying to figure out his role and responsibilities in the team. And so I want him, this game, to enable Soaz. I want him to get Soaz ahead. I think that when you have a Renekton against Aatrox, a matchup that arguably should be a skill matchup, I want to see Maxtor try and get him ahead.
I mean, frankly, the beauty of Misfits composition, at least as the lane phase is concerned, is you can go towards that Renekton. You can blow someone up. You have a Rise. That's a targetable lockdown CC that offers a super easy flag and drag from Jarvan. Or you go down bottom with the taunt from Galio. Maxlor has a wealth of options about how and when and where he wants to attack this map.
And for the side of Fnatic, I think the early game options are a little more limited. Now, that's not to say that Sejuani can't gank you in the early game. Depending on what the state of the lanes are, she actually has a very solid valid 2v2 up towards the top side of the map, and she also has options to play around bot as well when you are utilizing this Lucian Braum. Braum, Sejuani, very strong in terms of the 3 versus 3. So I think that they do have options. You just got to be very careful, because if that Jarvan comes early and he gets a counter gank, it's going to go very wrong for Fnatic.
And like something FLICKR was saying in the draft, Brox's decision-making, where he decides to prioritize his time, can make or break this Fnatic comp. I'm taking a look at the summon spells really quickly. Maxwell showed his face in the mid lane. It's coming up into the flash teleport from Nemesis. A little more global pressure, obviously, can help out against that Realm Warp from Febby.
I mean, obviously, more global pressure, but a super bold move. To see Jarvan rise and to think that you don't have to take cleanse into this matchup tells me that Nemesis needs to play this super safe. He's looking at wave clearing from afar. He doesn't ever want to put himself in a scenario where he gets locked out in the middle of his lane and he's forced to burn the flash, because otherwise he's dead.
We saw him taking a whole lot of damage from Febby, at least early on there, pushing in with those overloads in the Rune Prison. You can see the wave pushing towards Fnatic, both middle and bottom, so Misfits with the early shove advantage.
And I kind of want to look a little bit bigger picture, because as I'm looking at Fnatic's composition, I have a couple of concerns, and it does start with this Lucian. Lucian is a mid-range ADC. Now, obviously, he has the relentless pursuit. Wow, couldn't get my mouth around that one. And he is piloted by a very established guy like Reckless. But against the likes of Galio and Cassiopeia of Ryze, these champions have so much threat and danger and reach on a mid-range champion like Reckless. It's going to be picture perfect from him to maneuver around these team fights against such champions that have longer range.
It's just really, really risky if you get caught by that CC, and Brox has spent a fair amount of time waiting in this tri-bush now on the blue side. Can come in behind Hansama and Gorilla. Dun dun, here's the Winter's Bite. Justice Punch comes out. Defensive flash from Hansama. Very, very good taunt timing from Gorilla. But this is a successful game from Broxer. It costs Hansama his flash.
So we talked a little bit about it. The Braum plus Sejuani duo is very strong at setting up plays. But also, you talked about running cleanse on Nemesis. The fact that there's no cleanse on Hansama is definitely a big point at which you can look to attack in the early game. And when you are running the Lucian Braum, it's very important, especially in this kind of composition, to try and get this lane ahead. And the fact that they've already gotten the flash out from Hansama is definitely strong. What it has resulted in, though, is Maxwell has been able to build up a bit of a farm and level differential, because while Broxer has spent so much time towards the bot side of the map, Maxwell has just been farming away and now is on his second rotation of jungle play.
All right, where does Maxwell decide to spend his time if and when he chooses to gank? There was a gigantic wave that Hansama was catching underneath the tower. You saw Reckless and Hylissang pushing that one all the way forward. So a very small CS disparity, but I think this will be evened up, as Hansama will use that Twin Fang just to continuously push out this wave and farm it up. And really on that Cassiopeia bot lane, until you pick up that tier, it's a little frustrating to play, and that's obviously why you see him running that teleport.
Tier, Lost Chapter, those are the big breakpoints that you're looking for Cassiopeia, so you can have the mana, spam, be aggressive in that lane.
And also note, the reason why Maxwell can go for this play is because he has priority in top side and bot side. Something we talked a lot about over the last few weeks is by having that pressure in a certain lane, means that those laners can then provide that support. And against a Sejuani who can be surprisingly strong in these duels, having that pressure is very, very valuable.
Ooh, Bwipo manages to connect a full combo onto Soaz. Flash is available for Soaz. He's down to 100 HP. Slice and Dice is not available just yet. One more hit from Bwipo is all that's going to be needed. First blood, solo kill. Bwipo onto Soaz.
And this was a huge mistake from Soaz, but a big play from Bwipo as we see more fighting in the bot lane.
All right, Winds of War comes out. That's a defensive flash away. Hansama's running down. Reckless realizes he's going to get stunned up by the Braum passive. 200 hit points and no flash on Hansama. He's running for his life. Down to 100. Reckless can't yet get in range. Once again, very good timing on the taunt. Reckless is low. Gorilla turns it around. Now all of a sudden, Hilly's trying to hunt for a little bit more as Nemesis completes the teleport. Flashes onto the tower. Miasma will buy some time, but he will be able to escape with his life. And Nemesis ends up saving the day.
And shots fired across the map. At the end of the day, it is Fnatic with the bigger win, however. They do commit the teleport to it, so you can see the wave is being missed from Nemesis down there, but just in time with his ultimate as we take another look at top.
And this is the big misplay here from Soaz. He goes to the very edge of the knockback, which means that Bwipo is able to land all 3 of the Qs from Aatrox. And the fact that you eat all that damage, there's no way that you're going to come out on top. Unfortunately for Bwipo, he's able to make this chase happen. We then have a play down bot, where Fnatic's like, there's no flash on Hansama, so we can just go for the all-in.
I'm going to say huge credit to Gorilla. He played this zone control so well in the extended fight, using his taunt initially to zone Reckless away from Hansama that allows the Cassiopeia to slither to safety, and then again turns it around with perfect CC.
And the fact that Reckless is then forced to use all of his summoner spells and Gorilla just finds that kill just shows you how strong Galio is in the laning phase. You can never afford to underestimate his damage, and it even forces Nemesis to TP in.
All right, as we come out of the replay, it is a very brief pause. I am hearing from my production and stage team that it was an accidental tab out, so we should be in shortly. I have a question. Nemesis using both the teleport and the flash just for a counter 1v1. Do you think that's worth it? Obviously, if he doesn't get punished for having both of those used.
It depends on how hard he's actually punished. If we go back and see that Febiven gets an opportunity where he can pull the wave away from Nemesis, again, this guy's not running Cleanse, you have a Jarvan and a Ryze, so you can open up for a gank, and if he decides to limit some of that EXP and that gold that Nemesis would have access to.
So I actually don't think it'll hurt him that much at all, largely because I think this matchup, pretty much for the entirety of the laning phase, isn't going to be touched or really looked at from either side. I think this entire early game is going to be focused around top and bot, because I think the Ryze's only focus is to become a relevant side lane threat. And what you'll often see him do is, because Nemesis has no flash or teleport, he has to play a little more defensively. So what you should keep your eyes on Febiven is which lane he looks to roam towards, as Soaz is now in trouble once again.
All right, Soaz is throwing down the Dominus. Remember, he's got no flash available, gets caught out by Broxa. We'll try to get some damage down, but with Number Blades hitting it to pull him back, that's just too easy for Broxa and Bwipo. It does open up the Ocean Drake, and I do actually have just a quick reminder of the last time these two teams met. When Soaz played against Bwipo, the last time, it was Soaz that was dumpstering Bwipo. He went 5-0-6 in lane, it was Soaz that got the solo kills, and now the shoe is on the other foot, and Bwipo is getting revenge against his former teammates.
And the fact of the matter is that Soaz isn't on a champion like Urgot anymore that can kind of go 2 kills down and still find utility or kind of power back into the map. On a champion like Renekton, he's going to have to play it that much closer to the chest to find any sort of relevance in this game. Yeah,
it's actually really hard when a Renekton falls behind to actually be impactful. And this is why we talked so much about in the early game that I wanted to see Maxlor invest time up towards the top side, because it is a dangerous pick, and because this is a skill matchup, one big mistake can cost you so much later on. So we'll see how Soaz can come back. The bright side for Misfits is their bot lane is doing well. There's a CS advantage in favor of Hansama. He has the level advantage. He has now completed the Lost Chapter as well. And so both mid and bot are still carry threats for the side of Misfits.
I want to take a quick minute to point down at the itemization, and it's a rush on Merc Treads for Lissandra. So again, Nemesis playing so respectful to the Ryze in this mid lane.
And it's something that we touched on in the previous game. Frosk Vedas was touching on how Lissandra as a champion, when you have some damage threats elsewhere, the amount of utility she brings to teams, you need to stay alive long enough to get the utility to matter. And you can itemize defensively. Nemesis, with a little bit of alone time in this lane, will pick himself up that turret plate as Febiven makes his way back.
It's actually really interesting, something we don't get to talk about very often, but whether you decide to upgrade your boots early or later. And basically there are champions that can afford to do it because they're either just utility bots and they don't need the damage, or they just have so much damage stacked in their kit that they can actually afford to do it. Aurelia is a really good example of someone who has so much passive damage. She doesn't even need items early, she can just afford to get those armor boots or magic resistance boots early. So Lissandra is a really good example of someone that can look to do it.
And that's exactly what Nemesis has done. Got 2 stacks on that Dark Seal, and Fnatic, as we're getting close to 10 minutes, are just shy of a 1,000 gold lead. There's no noticeable CS leads just yet. Small advantage for Hansama in the bottom lane, but the wave is crashing into Reckless, so he will claw back that deficit ever so slightly. And we're moving into this mid-game phase where Bwipo has now roamed to mid lane.
And that was the thing that I just noticed on the minimap. You'll see that he's actually now have so much control of this top side. He's constantly has the push against the Renekton, who has to show a lot more respect, and it means that he has that window of opportunity to roam down. But there is no Drake to play for, so he immediately backs off, and Nemesis was not in lane to really set up a play onto Feb.
All right, got a brief moment. I will let you know that with Soaz dying isolated in the top lane, that was his 17th isolated death this split. That puts him second highest out of all players in the league, only behind Vizicachi at 19. While I'm rambling on about stats, Fnatic are making a play into Hansama and Gorilla, but Maxlor is in range to counter. Goes in with the insta-cataclysm, flag and drags to safety. Reckless will get a full channel culling onto Maxlor, and the Realm Warp trigger is not pulled. So everybody gets away alive.
So a lot of small things happened there that didn't really go in anybody's favor. The first thing is that the ultimate came out from Nemesis as Gorilla was buffering his E. So a lot of props for Gorilla to be able to actually get out of that situation. The other big thing is Hansama used his ultimate a little too early and wasn't able to land it onto anyone. So he couldn't really set up a play for then Maxlore to follow up on. But the reality is 4 members were drawn bot. Febiven could push in mid, and now he's actually built up a pretty solid CS advantage in the mid lane.
For me, it's kind of the question of what are we fighting over, and it feels like maybe a bit of desperation from Misfits in this early game. Yeah, you see a possible window where you can catch Fnatic out, but they didn't have perfect information about where Broxah was. There was no dragon to fight over. If that fight had gone sideways, that could have spelled devastation for the early game.
And I think very important to note that Misfits did secure that Ocean Drake once Soez was killed a little bit earlier. Going to be helping out the slightly extended laning phases. Soez is now even on CS with Bwipo. He's got himself the Phage, the Ruby Crystal, and the Longsword versus the Kindle Gem and the Ninja Tabite. And now Hylissang with that Unbreakable is being pushed out of the river by Hansama.
Yeah, and as we have a bit of time, because the game has slowed down a little bit, some cool itemization things that have happened on both sides. The rush for Ninja Tabite is really good against Renekton. For those players at home that have been struggling against it, getting any kind of armor against a very AD-intensive champion, especially in the early laning phase, really mitigates a lot of that. And because of how strong Bwipo is as a champion on this Aatrox, you actually don't need it, so you can just afford to go for that early armor. And also, something you pointed out, Quickshot, was the early Cinder Hulk from Broxah, not even going for boots. He just wants to have that full item completed, get a little bit of HP under his belt so that he can be more of a front line to then follow up, to soak up more damage so that his damage dealers in Bwipo and Reckless can carry as the game progresses.
On the other side, you do have the Warrior enchant that's coming out from Maxlore as opposed to the Cinder Hulk that we've seen in the previous 2 games that Jarvan has appeared. And for me, it's just this idea of the cannonball composition. You know, if Maxlore lands on top of someone, Gorilla then stacks on top of it as well, you can instantly delete someone from Fnatic's side.
Like, it's so nervous when you say that, Frost, because the Cannibal comp can miss the target, can miss the kill, and then they just get Goomba stomped by an Aatrox as well as Lissandra and Lucian. So for Misfits, they've got an even gold footing at 12.5 minutes in. We need to see how their team fights work. And Vedius, during the draft, you talked extensively around how you wanted to see Maxlore making engages that work, and Misfits as a team making team fights go in their favor.
Yes.
And we're heading towards that phase of the game.
Well, we're only approaching the mid-game right now, Quickshot, and I think that we're going to see a couple more skirmishes, but I think this game will ultimately come down to big team fights, and that's really what the fans want. Everyone loves to see Fnatic team fighting because it gets to highlight your boy Reckless. But
Your boy. You actually pulled that off pretty well. I didn't think you could.
And then Misfits, on the other hand, they're a team that kind of historically, ever since they joined the league, has been a very... they've been known for having very impressive team fights, and a lot of it has come off the back of Hansama. So I think we're going to have some very tense, exciting 5v5s, but it's going to be a little while until we get there.
But my concern is that who actually executes the team fights is Maxlore and Gorilla on this composition, and they have not been as consistent as Hansama in finishing them.
No, definitely not the case. And right now, Broxah was waiting in the wings. Not going to find an opportunity this time around. I think I've got to give some credit to Maxlore here. He has been able to counter-gank at the right times. He was able to secure the first Dragon, secure the Rift Herald there, uncontested as well. But unfortunately, it was at the cost of several turret plates just before they're about to drop. 3 secured in the bottom lane, 3 in the top lane, 1 in the mid lane, and that is allowing Fnatic to once again just edge ahead as far as the gold is concerned. And first big items picked up with Proto Belt in the mid lane, Blade of the Rune King down in the bottom lane for the Fnatic carry.
But it feels like only for a moment, because it feels like the map has been split, that Misfits feel super confident around their Galio and the Cassiopeia right now. They're constantly playing aggressive, they have the Rift Herald, and they're just looking for their opportunity to blow open this side of the map, whereas Fnatic feel pretty good about the Bwipo versus Soaz matchup.
The tension continues to build in our match of the week between Fnatic and Misfits. First tower is still not secured, and it's exactly like you mentioned, Vedius, both of these teams want to scale up. I think the boop from Shelly will be able to pick this one up, and that will be the bonus gold given over to Febiven, which I think is crucially important for a player that has been fairly criticized and fairly held under a microscope this split.
And I talked a little bit about it in the draft and how I feel that Febiven as a player has had very solid performances over the last few weeks, but he's been very isolated and almost detached from the rest of his team. It feels like that he's been playing for himself and doing what he wants. And the great thing about Ryze is I think that's the perfect kind of champion for that kind of style. And that's why I was so happy to see it for Feathervin, because I think that he can do a lot with it. And now that he's getting all this extra gold, he's actually had a very healthy, safe, free laning phase. And I think that he's scaling to going to be a big threat for the side of Misfits as the game progresses.
It's also the fact that Feathervin is now unlocked. He doesn't have to deal with push duty on his tower. He can just throw that lane forward. There's no tower right now from Fnatic to stop it. And then he can start roaming and looking around for those side lane plays and not just being left on an isolated island.
Let's see whether or not the impact is going to be helping out the team, because as we saw on screen, Fnatic were able to pick up a tower in the top lane, while Misfits secured their second dragon of the game in Cloud Drake. The next one will be an Ocean. And as 2 towers have fallen, I want to start seeing as how the teams decide to prioritize their lane assignments and figure out where they're going to start pushing. Because, of course, on the Misfits side, slightly non-traditional tower-taking team. But obviously the Renekton and the Ryze can do very, very well in those sides.
So, I mean, Baron will be a big point of contention later on in the game. You are quite right. Quickshot, their ability to take towers is kind of weak for a while, but the great thing about AP champions is they reach a certain point and they probably melt towers faster than AD carries do. And that's one of the cool things about Ryze and Cassio. The other thing I know is Frost, maybe you can help me on this one, because I'm not used to seeing a Black Cleaver on Aatrox. I imagine that it's largely due to the extra cooldown reduction and the spammability of spells, but it's not something that I usually see coming out from this guy.
I think with the... Oh, you're right.
Because like normally it was like the Ghost Blade. Right?
I'm looking at it, I was like, Black Cleaver, what Renekton always builds it, and then you said Aatrox.
Aatrox. So yeah, it's a little bit of innovation from Bwipo. I think a lot of it is just have that extra bit of tankiness, but also get that cooldown reduction as we see a bit of a play towards mid.
Okay, Flashing Cleanse is available for Feathervin. That's the cleanse already used. Caught up, flashes away, gets locked down. Here comes the Galio ultimate, and Feathervin stays alive. A few seconds longer. He manages to walk away. Gorilla and Soaz arrive just in time. Defensive flash from Soaz. And Misfits come to save the day.
And the most important objective that Fnatic actually want to crack right now is that mid tower, but they just committed so much into throwing everything to force it down, and Misfits somehow survived the onslaught, and they should now have tempo in the game.
And I feel like there's a lot of Fnatic fans here in Berlin, because there was only golf claps at how well Misfits and Feathervin were able to escape, but it continues to be Fnatic making some proactive plays around champions, and Misfits making more proactive plays around the objectives, like the Heralds and the Dragons.
And I want to say it, I know that Gorilla's scoreline doesn't necessarily show it yet, but in the first, let's say 18 minutes of this game, I've been very impressed with him. I feel like, just to echo some of Vedius' sentiment, that Gorilla has kind of been the big underperforming member for Misfits, but he is right on time, exactly where he needs to be right now.
Here comes Maxlor. Brox is matching him as well, but Ryze is on the way too. There is a teleport available for Nemesis, so he could join the fight should anything kick off. What are we looking for here, Maxlor? Are you going to go for it?
We're literally leaning into the screen to wait for something to happen, but the risk was maybe too high, and Misfits back away to find another play.
And again, it's this idea that Misfits felt that for a brief moment that they had tempo, that they were on the offense in this game because they still had some critical ultimates available to play, whereas Fnatic were missing all of their big ults. Now that they've come off of cooldown, Misfits say, okay, we probably missed our window, we survived the onslaught in the mid lane, let's just reset and look again for another opportunity, and it looks like it's top.
All right, there's an opportunity. Soaz is going to get some help. There's a teleport being channeled by Nemesis, but I think Bwipo may just be dead before it can arrive. Feathervin's actually piecing out. Turns back around. Rune Prison buys some time as he's locked in place. Now the first kill will be in World Ender, so Bwipo will come back to fight. Nemesis is running away with the Claw of Doom. Bwipo kills Soaz. Now Feathervin can't find the damage yet. The Overload is not going to find the kill, and with no flash to chase, Misfits start the fight but lose it.
So close between these two teams, but now Brox is on his way top. Feathervin, he's going to show that respect.
Who's baiting whom? Bwipo may decide to go in. Maxlor's simply not close enough. Waiting to see if either team commit, and they don't. Misfits lose the exchange.
And you can feel the tension there, the fact that both teams looked for the bait. Who was going to step forward? Was it Feathervin or was it Bwipo? But again, the stakes, no second chances, no reason to snowball the game. They want to take the 100% certain plays.
So what we'll see here is an immediate response from Nemesis. Love the teleport that comes through, and Bwipo just using his ultimate to buy time. He actually positions in a way, getting in front of the minions too, to make it harder for Feathervin to land his skill shots. He's the one that still gets CC'd up. For Soaz, for the majority of this, is actually in a 1v2, but then Feathervin, he can't get close enough to find the kill onto Nemesis. Unfortunately, Soaz has no mobility skills left to get away from Bwipo, and ultimately they come out ahead in the 2 versus 2, and nothing but frustration falls onto the face of Soaz.
0-3 3 for the former Fnatic top laner. Misfits are now 2,000 gold behind as we crest to 20 minutes. And now we start to look at the items. 2 items being completed for several members. Febiven's actually gone for a Righteous Glory second item, so leaning more into teamfights initiation tools.
Okay.
So complementing some differences in builds, Nemesis has gone for the Ludenzecker.
I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to be that big damage threat. Ryze is still going to output it, so can start to spec towards that utility and not sacrifice too much of his damage. But you still have a Cassiopeia as well as a Warrior's Enchant Jarvan and a Renekton top. So you're not losing a ton from Ryze speccing that way.
Okay, Misfits are going to be pushing the top tower because Fnatic secured their first dragon. But when you look at some of these items and you look at these team compositions and the way the teams are playing, you do need to start asking the question of, like, do you prefer one comp when you start thinking about scaling and you start thinking about 3 items or maybe 4 items if the game goes that late?
So I think ultimately both team fights are actually very, at this point, skill dependent, because the fact that Bwipo's so far ahead is really, oh, look at Reckless.
I'm looking at him.
He had to use his heal there, and that just goes to show how strong Febiven is. I think one thing that's really underappreciated is how levels can be very impactful. Reckless is level 11, Febiven is level 14. Even though Reckless has 2 completed items, the amount of base stats that you get from just having all those bonus points in your skills is so influential and forces Reckless to burn a heal that arguably he didn't need to do.
Well, let's see if it comes back to hurt him, because Infernal Drake's the next one. We have Baron alive, but neither team's really been very committed to these big fights. And look, 2 items now. Essence Reaver for Reckless. Death Dance for Bwipo. Banshee's Veil's been sitting for Hans Summer for a little bit. Going to continue to scale up.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you brought us back to the items, as Ultimate was actually used there.
All right, another one traded. Nemesis forced to move that one away. Febby is actually pulling a lot of threat. He did need to use the cleanse, though, to make a clean escape. But again, you feel Fnatic trying to force a play to get an advantage.
And again, it's over this mid lane tower. This is kind of their gateway into accessing Misfits' deeper jungle. We talked about how playing around Baron will be very important, that 5v5s are very important for both these compositions. It's very hard to do unless Fnatic force this one down to unlock the rest of the map. But that means that Misfits know exactly where they're going to strike. And it's going to be who pulls the trigger first. Is this going to be about the Lissandra and the Sejuani? Or will Misfits find the flank as Fnatic continue to force up this mid lane and find a Jarvan ult?
I thought Maxwell was going to go in. Nemesis has no flash, was trying to chip away at this tower to unlock access to the jungle like you talked about, Frost. And Nemesis uses that claw to escape, but with some support on the flanks and the fact that Hans Summer's Cassio's in the top lane, he has no teleport. It's going to be a tower trade, top for middle, but Fnatic are not done yet.
Yeah, Misfits, they might actually look for an engage here. Renekton is on his way. Cassio also has the TP, and if you look down by the river, you can see that red ward sitting there for a potential flank, but Misfits decide not to commit to it, so they're going to disengage. A lot of tension is being built up right now. We already said at the beginning of the game how important this is for both these teams in the race for playoffs. Right now, Fnatic are the ones that sit with the lead.
Yeah, race for playoffs, and of course, just a reminder, the best teams in Europe will be playing in Rotterdam on the 13th and 14th of April. If you haven't got your tickets, go check out eu.lollysports.com/Rotterdam, and you'll be able to come join us. Top 3 teams in Europe will get the number 1 and number 2 automatically advance, and then the winners in the quarters in the first semi-final. Maybe Fnatic and Misfits will be one of those teams.
So one of the things that I think Misfits is really struggling with right now is their ability to push past the river. And something you talked a lot about, Frost, is by securing that mid lane tower, it actually opens up the map a lot more for Fnatic. But the reality is Misfits have no pressure on a side lane. Unless they put Febiven against Bwipo, they're not going to be able to match what Bwipo is doing. But they can't do that because he's running cleanse, and Bwipo is not going to leave bot lane because he has the teleport. So it's really difficult for Misfits to actually generate any pressure on the map just because of how strong Bwipo is right now.
Which is why we're kind of waiting for these giant arenas about the Infernal or the Baron, because that's when Misfits will have to plant their feet and say, no, we will force the fight now, whereas Fnatic will be able to dictate a lot of the tempo of this mid game because they do have that power in the side lane.
Well, continue to scale up in the items and set
Unless they
up
just
a
get
fight.
picked.
There's Maxlaw, decides to pick a fight on Broxah. Katak isn't thrown down, but for what reason, Maxlaw? Simply no reply. Febiven gets knocked up into the air by the Glacial Fissure. This will cause both teleports to be used. Flashes forward for Fnatic. The culling is used. Febiven is down. He had flash available. He didn't get to use it. Now Soaz is running for his life. He's stunned up, locked down, caught out. and Soaz will try to get some damage, but it simply will not matter. Bwipo gets 2 quick kills, and it is a punish after Misfits started the fight.
And it was the fact that Fnatic had rotated their members, that they felt confident to have Broxah there. I was scared for a second. I was like, no, Fnatic, don't throw your chances away. But they snapped the trap close, and now they have complete control over the Baron. Bwipo now zoning off the rest of Misfits.
But this is the pivotal point. Can Maxwell redeem, and can he steal away this objective? I don't know if he gets a chance.
Oh man, Hansama doesn't even get a chance to use the petrifying gaze. Maxwell's still alive with flash and smite, but he simply cannot get close enough to the pit. This should be a Fnatic objective.
And you know, coming into this match, I was like, Misfits are going toe-to-toe with Fnatic. They're actually hanging in here, and a lot of us are saying Fnatic are actually top 3 right now. Most dominant team that we've seen in the second half of the spring split. You know, Fnatic are back, baby, and maybe this means that Misfits have joined them, but suddenly the game cracks open, and Misfits are rightfully put in their place.
So I really wasn't a fan of this engage, ultimately, for Misfits. The fact that they used their tools to get onto Broxah actually puts Feather in a really awkward spot, and Bwipo joins the fight before the teleport can come through from Renekton. So great utilization of the window there from Bwipo, who for me has been the MVP of this game. He just zoned so many members of Misfits away from the fight. He is dealing a ridiculous amount of damage, and not only did he find a solo kill onto Soaz, but this man has been on top of it over the last few weeks for Fnatic.
5-0-1 on the kill score, 900 gold bounty, and Fnatic are up 6,000 gold over Misfits. They've got Baron buff secured, and this is just a great position to be in. Exactly like you said, Vedius, it has been unlocked from the top lane. Wherever Bwipo gets moved, Misfits seem to suffer.
And it has to be said, when Soaz is sitting 0-4-0, that, what, a couple of weeks ago, that was him, sitting across, looking at Bwipo, who is now running away with this game. To go from World Semifinals, or excuse me, World Finals, to then trade and end up on what feels like Fnatic Light.
Yeah.
Oh man,
attacked again.
This is your fault, Frostgurin. Caster Curse is a thing. You just stopped talking about Soaz. He was 0-4-0, and now he will be 0-5-0. Will get run down and kill secured by Reckless, his first of the game.
It's just salt in the wound.
It is a rough game for Soaz, but honestly, we talked about how that top lane is a skill matchup, and we talked about how volatile it could be. And ultimately, it was Bwipo that came out on top, but then Broxah helped snowball it even harder. And I just feel that Misfits did not enable their top lane in the same way Fnatic did.
They did not, and because of the fact that Soaz has once again died isolated, he now tops the table for isolated deaths in the spring split at 20. He has overtaken Vizicachi, who was sitting at 19, and it's just a very difficult game. He is trying to make an impact, and it is simply not working. The 4th tower secured for Fnatic. They're rotating to the mid lane as Bwipo is ushering the towers forward. And with a minute left on Baron buff, Fnatic are pushing towards Misfits base.
And Misfits cannot make a single mistake here because of the pressure, the Baron behind Fnatic, and as they approach a tower, when you have Sejuani and Lissandra, you make one wrong move, you're dead in a team fight, and the game ends.
So why is Rise building Rylai's?
These are questions that we will need to ask at a later time. Because Righteous Glory Rylai's is definitely what you need.
Rylai's is super cost efficient for its build path.
Sure.
Like the AP that you get off of what you're paying in, hold the thought, he's okay. It also offers a ton of control.
This just doesn't Rise. Like, as a champion, I just feel like that he doesn't maximize or utilize it. I mean,
well, let's see if Everman can make it work now, because there goes Bwipo pushing all the way forward. Maxwell decides to start the fight, throws the Cataclysm down, flag and drags to safety, and Bwipo, his ultimate has been popped. The passive is now bringing him back to life, but look at the damage dealers. That's already killed a Gorilla. Hansaman's still untouched. He's trying to put the damage onto the front line. That's a zone away. Featherwind is already going to pick himself one onto Nemesis. The tower goes down, and it's a 1-for-2. Fnatic get the kill and the tower.
So Fnatic, in a 5 versus 6, as they couldn't even take down the tower for the majority of that fight, still come out ahead, only losing Nemesis, who just dived immediately onto the backline. So props to Fnatic, a fantastic fight from them, results in another objective. And they're going to continue to force Misfits back into their base.
And the reality is that the net is closing around Misfits. We are approaching a 10k gold deficit. They have managed to survive the Baron and the fact that the game didn't end, but Fnatic are well and truly in the driver's seat here.
Yes, they certainly are. So you can actually see Hansama, he gets a pretty solid ultimate because it zones the majority of Fnatic away, which means that they were able to get this damage down onto Bwipo, but then Nemesis gets into the thick of things. He throws out a very good ultimate. This then split apart Misfits, and then they're forced to retreat as Hansama and Featherwind moment while still living, they lose their front line.
And of course, need to just remind everybody, both of these teams tied in the standings, fighting to confirm that playoff spot. Coming into today, Misfits had the advantage with heads-to-heads. But when we look forward, and I want to shift a light onto Fnatic, who are in the lead right now. They are at a position where they can take sole control of 5th place. They play XL, G2, and Splice. Those are their last games of the regular season, and they need to get as many wins as possible to increase the likelihood and their chances of securing a post-season playoff.
You know, it's funny because last week we thought that this would actually be a pretty good schedule for Fnatic. But you look at it, XL seem to be causing a lot of upsets.
Yes.
Splice is now sitting in position to actually challenge for second. And G2 may actually be the easiest matchup of there over the next 2 weeks, which is pretty funny. But anyway.
If I did not have the context of the most recent results, that would sound sarcastic. Yep. But it is possible.
The concern is always kind of the emotions that come behind a G2 versus Fnatic matchup.
Like, even if G2 are a team that says, you know what, we're going to take it a little easy, they're still going to take it seriously against Fnatic, as Maxlaw and Featherburn find themselves in a 1v2 against Bwipo and not able to win. Now the TP comes through.
This is from Hans Sama. Bwipo's still got flash available, doesn't even need it. Just able to dash over the wall. So as places a control, that's a slice. Not going to be able to dice. And the third tower, Dragon of the game there, secured by Fnatic. 2 Oceans and an Infernal. There will be an Elder Drake up fairly shortly. 9,000 gold lead. We're hitting 3-4 items now as Guardian Angel is picked up for Bwipo. And he's got a full item advantage over Soes, who's gone thrift store shopping with
no, quick shot.
Executioner's
Forget
Calling.
the items. He's level 18 to level 15.
There we go.
There is nothing this little toy Renekton can do against Aatrox.
Yep. Even with the Spear of Sojourn, which is a great item on the Renekton, he can't approach him. And all we can do is reinforce that this was a skill matchup that they picked into. They haven't played around it. And even Brox is solo killing him.
Brox is going to win this fight, sending a message. Very cheeky play from Soes, steps forwards to get both the slice and the dice. Reckless is calling, kills the little toy once more. But
here we go.
All the rest of Misfits, this is a desperation Baron. If Misfits do not get this Baron, they will lose this game. There's the upward chain going in. Misfits turn the attention. The turn and burn. They get down Nemesis, but Bwipo is running amok. 1 versus 4. World End is going to buy so much time. Here comes Gorilla with the ultimate to buy an additional time for Misfits. Now it is still a 4v4 and Misfits are running for their lives. Flash from Hillesang. Miasma from Hans Sama will buy some time as Brox and Fnatic are looking to seal the deal and finish the game. Gorilla buys a taunt just to get Misfits to safety. But Fnatic are not done yet. They continue to chase. Winter's Bite may be enough if Hilly can find a target, but they cannot. And Misfits lose 2.
I like the fact that Fnatic are able to make a kill across map, still turn up in time to stop the Baron, and they also finish the fight without Nemesis using ult or flash.
And you can see that Fnatic have full vision control of the enemy jungle as well. The TP will come through. Misfits want a challenge for this one, but will they be able to steal it?
This time round, Misfits are in. They've got some vision inside the pit. Hans Sama's got no flash available. Baron is going to be contested once again. 9,000 gold lead.
From Fnatic.
Nemesis has teleport available. He can TP in behind Misfits. Soes will spot it out. The little toy that could. Maxwell flags and drags to safety. Well, there's the fight. Soes and Nemesis trading toe for toe. Ruthless Predator buys some time. It interrupts the claw. Soes is trying to get some revenge, but Fnatic secure the Baron. This has to be what seals the deal. With Baron, another kill on the board, and Fnatic maintain complete control.
And everyone is taking their turns on Fnatic of who gets to kill Soaz next. Soaz tried his little hardest, but he couldn't make it happen. Now, here's the key thing. Nemesis dies here, a great turn off the Baron from Misfits without getting to use his flash or his ultimate, which means that the Baron takes so long that when he does teleport back in, he does have those summoners available.
Yeah, he certainly does, and you can see how strong Bwipo is. The actual amount of sustain that he has just through the damage and his build that he's chosen to go for is actually ridiculous, because then he comes back to life after his GA pops. Gorilla does what he can to help the rest of his team escape, but Fnatic, they end up securing the Baron, and now they're on the doors of Misfits base. And Misfits, we said it at the beginning, there are a few chances left. Playoffs, a spot is on the horizon, and Fnatic go for the fight.
Oh, Fnatic go for the dive! They've got Hans Sama! They killed him under his tower! Reckless is unstoppable at 5, 1 and 5! Bwipo gets lucky kill number 7, and this might just be the final push. Fnatic have deconstructed Misfits, and they're on the Nexus.
Their foot is on Misfits' throat. There are no more second chances, and Misfits, Soaz, 0-9 on the day as Fnatic storm the Nexus.
Fnatic truly are back in the fight for playoffs and the finals.
look of disbelief on Reckless's face as Soaz goes 0-9 in that matchup. But so much attention was put onto shutting him down. Bwipo demonstrating how much he has grown throughout the throughout this split, and he got the better of Soaz today.
Fnatic are on a 5-game winning streak. They are undoubtedly and unquestionably the best performing team in the second half of the split. But I think it's crucial to remember when Soaz played Bwipo the first time, he ended 5-0-6.
Yep.
When Bwipo played Soaz this time, he ended 7-0-7.
Take the script and throw it out. This is no longer a league that is dominated by G2. We now have G2, Vitality, Origin, and now Fnatic. This is a crash course of a commercial that you couldn't script better as we rocket towards the playoffs in Rotterdam.
Yep, the league is so competitive right now here in Europe. Everyone is beating everyone, but at the end of the day, it is Fnatic that come out on top.
I mean, it feels that way, and just to, again, remind everybody, with that win, Fnatic are now 8 wins, 7 losses. They are behind 4 teams in the standings, so solidly in 5th place, alone in 5th place, after at one point at the beginning of the season being 9th. Now, in 6th place, there's a 3-way tie. Schalke, SK, and Misfits. Only one of them can survive, and they all have 3 games remaining.
Ah, it's so tense, Trevor. I cannot wait for our remaining games. It's only day 1 of week 8. We still have so many exciting matchups tomorrow as well. But to concentrate on today, Fnatic played some excellent League of Legends, and you have to give props to the growth of Nemesis that he's made throughout the split, having to fill the shoes of Caps and many Fnatic expectations. He has done a fantastic job as we approach the end of the split. Bwipo has grown significantly. Hylissang seems to be finding his form, and the only player we have not spoken about in their massive set of win streak is Reckless. And the fact that that is the case just showcases how strong Fnatic is right now.
And the question for me now is, what is this ceiling of this iteration of Fnatic? We've seen them with Caps and Soaz, but what does Nemesis and Bwipo Fnatic look like?
5-0, contesting for the top. They play G2 next week. And let's see if they can pick up a more impressive win than Splice. I mean, it seems like everybody can take G2 down this time.
It does seem
They've
like
lost 3 games already. And if there was a time to peak, if there was a time to unlock your players and your carries, at the end of the split before playoffs, to go into those best of 5s with the amount of confidence that this team is building up, it is fantastic. Now let's turn our attention to Misfits. It looked okay for a while. They looked even for a while.
But it was all a ruse, Quickshot,
go.
because we talked about it at the very beginning of the game. We talked about how this top lane matchup would be so pivotal. And I had my eyes on Maxtor, and I don't want to keep attacking the guy, but I can't help but criticize him when he was the guy that had to be the deciding factor in this game. He was the one that had to turn the tables and help Misfits overcome the Titan that Fnatic has become in the second half of the split. And so far, he has not been able to do it. And I feel like that if Misfits even want to stand a chance of qualifying for playoffs, if they want to be the last team to make it, then Maxtor is the guy that has to step up for me.
I won't dispute that Maxtor is probably one of the most pivotal pieces of Misfits that's kind of missing right now, but I just don't think you can overlook how many isolated deaths
for sure.
Soaz found himself in. Like that game, there are plenty of people who need to hold up their hand and say, this one's on me, boys.
21 isolated deaths for Soaz.
Oh, it went up
now
again?
Tops the table. It happened again.
He got like 25% of them in that game.
Yes, exactly. 0-9-1. Now, I want to just step back and just talk about Misfits as a whole, because in this, a tiebreaker group, Misfits are 2-0 over SK. This gives them an advantage.
They have so many head-to-heads.
But there's 0-1 over Schalke, and those are the 3 teams that are contesting for this final spot today, right now. There's still 3 games to play. It is not indicative of who's going to be the final 6 that go to playoffs, but it is a difficult situation for those 3 teams. Let's turn attention to more positive things. Key player of the game suggestions. Bwipo, Baroxa, or Hylissang. The unsung hero went 0-0-14. Go vote on Twitter at LOL Esports. Bwipo and Youngbuck will be joining us in PGL in just a few minutes. So while they're getting set up, I mean, we didn't get a huge amount of time to talk about Hilly this game, but he really was everywhere he needed to be, and his ultimates were game-changing.
I mean, Hilly feels to me like a player of like momentum and confidence, and when he gets to play aggressive, impactful in lane, like that's the Hylissang I want to see. And for a long time, it felt like he was kind of scared to do that he had been punished so many times that he was just going to play it out safe. And so I'm just happy to see Fnatic kind of back in stride, back in momentum, and unlocked.
You actually said that about Hilly in the draft as well, and it worked out on the Braum. So congratulations to Fnatic. We're going to hear what Broxah has to say after taking down Misfits.